Welcome to Breaking Beliefs. My name is Amy Vetter, and this is where we explore the thoughts that shape our lives and our work. Each episode uncovers how challenging our limiting beliefs creates space for authentic growth and sustainable success. Let's break some beliefs together. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs, where I interviewed Bob Doyle, the president and CEO of the Michigan Association of Certified Public Accountants. The MICPA serves over 17,500 members in accounting, finance, administration, and education, focusing on advocacy, collaboration, and education to support the accounting profession. Bob holds degrees in environmental engineering, engineering management, and public relations and organizational communication, which he uses to address both human and technological issues. Before MICPA, he was Vice President of Marketing, Communications, and Advocacy at the Association for Advancing Automation and a Marketing and Communications Manager at Environmental Quality Company, after working in engineering roles at General Motors. He is active in the community, serving on various boards, including the Michigan Society of Association Executives and the CPA Society of Executives Association. He is an alumni of Leadership Detroit, serves on the External Advisory Board of the Pavlis Honors College at Michigan Technological University, and is on the Executive Advisory Board of Winning Futures, where he also mentors high school students. During our discussion today, Bob shares his personal and professional journey, including his experience with family loss and his career transition from environmental engineering to association leadership. Bob discussed the importance of joy in the workplace and his organizational culture pillars, while also touching on personal routines. We discussed the importance of work-life balance, the role of gratitude in personal development, and the connection between joy and business performance. I hope you enjoy this episode. There's so many great stories that Bob shares and stories that you can take away and maybe apply to your own life. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs. I'm very excited to be here with Bob Doyle, the CEO of the Michigan Association of CPAs. And Bob, before we get started, do you want to tell the audience a little bit about what you do?
Sure. Thanks for inviting me, Amy. I was really looking forward to this conversation. So the Michigan Association of CPAs, we are the statewide association for all CPAs in the accounting profession throughout the state. And so I have the privilege and honor of leading the organization, and I get the chance to work with CPAs and members of the accounting profession. And, we have over 17,000 members, ranging from those in public accounting to those in business and industry to educators, government, anywhere where a CPA could work, they're part of our organization. And then students as well. We also have a college student membership. So our mission is to serve our members, to serve the CPA profession, then in turn really serve the public, the clients, the businesses that our members serve. We do it through three ways. We do it through advocacy, we do it through collaboration, and we do it through education. So, I have a wonderful team here, and that's our mission, to serve the profession.
Yeah, and you do have a wonderful team. I've worked with the Michigan Society for many years and always enjoy being there. So awesome. So would love to just start out talking about where you grew up, what your parents did for a living, just a little bit of your family background.
Sure. Yeah. It's always important to know backgrounds and how it leads to where people are today. So I grew up in Michigan. I grew up kind of in mid-Michigan near Lansing, the capital. I'm now in the Metro Detroit area, and wonderful childhood. We'll probably we'll get a little deep pretty quickly. Something that impacts me still today. That I have no problem sharing at all is I lost my mom when I was 6 years old.
Wow.
She passed away from cancer. She was 39, and
wow.
Left behind my dad and five of us. I have four siblings, so there were five of us in the family, ranging. I was in the first grade. My oldest sister was in the eighth grade, so there were five kids within about 7 years. After we lost my mom. And it's certainly was something that impacted me growing up, but then even
Mhm.
still does today. When
Yeah.
you lose a parent that young, but I had a wonderful childhood. My dad ended up remarrying and had a kind of a blended family, which which was great. Also, it has challenges, of course, as well, like any blended family can. But yeah, I graduated from high school and then went off to college in about as far away as you could go, but still in the state of Michigan at Michigan Tech University in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. For those that are familiar with Michigan, they call it God's country up in the UP. So that was kind of my journey as a child.
So, what kind of cancer did your mom have?
She had leukemia.
Oh wow. Okay.
Was something she was diagnosed with back when I was in kindergarten, and fought it, valiantly for about a year and a half or so. I mean, this was back I mean, it will show well, I just turned 50 this year, so
Yeah.
it was
I'm
back in
51, so there you go.
back in 1982 was when she passed, and so yeah, it's something, and I've had cancer since, and my family actually, both of my sisters have had cancer. Fortunately, they've come out of it both times, which is fantastic. But it's something that I certainly have always been very cognizant of
Mhm.
as I've grown up, and something that I've always been ensure that I try to hopefully lead a healthy lifestyle, and that's very important to me as well. And hopefully, try to remain cancer free. So yeah, it was cancer sucks, and
Yeah.
I know many people who have dealt with it. I even just recently hear colleagues at MICPA whose
Mhm.
have family members who have dealt with it. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but I don't think anyone doesn't know anyone who hasn't had in some way been affected by cancer.
So that must at 6, do you have as many memories of your mom as your siblings do, or like can you remember this time period?
Yeah, I do actually, and you know what? Believe it or not, I still something that I treasure. Uh,
Hmm.
is my mom used to interview us on cassette tapes.
Oh, I did that
Um,
too.
Yeah, and so we had I still have them, and actually, as I say this now, I'm like, you know what, I really need to get those into digital format just to
Yeah.
make sure we save them. And that helped. I remember going through the grieving
Mhm.
process of listening to those tapes, and but I do have really good memories of her, and I have this one of my favorite photos. We actually here at the MICPA office, we did like a baby photo contest, and I got one of my mom holding me. I was more of a not a baby, probably more of a toddler, maybe 3 years old or so, and then she was holding me, and we were at a farm or something, and she was like petting a horse, and I was kind of petting it too, and we actually have a similar photo of my wife holding my son when
Oh,
he was about that age, petting a horse. Like we didn't really mean to do it, but it was
yeah,
just,
yeah,
oh my
yeah.
gosh, it's like very similar. So yeah, I do have. I wish I had much longer memories of her, and but certainly do still remember those years.
Yeah. So the family dynamic probably shifted a lot during that
Mhm.
period of time. How did your father and your older siblings, shift in that dynamic?
Yeah. As I grew more into adulthood, I kind of look back on it now, and my dad, and I'm blessed that my dad is still in here today in great shape. He just turned 84,
Oh,
and still
wow.
golf. He still golfs twice a week, and
Good
I
for
get to see
him.
him quite a bit, which is wonderful. He's always kind of been my hero, and when I kind of came into adulthood and had my own and started my own family, I realized I was like, man, he was
Five
40
kids.
years old, widowed with 5 kids, ranging in age from, I guess, like I said, my sister was 14 and I was 6. I can't even imagine what he was going through. And he was
Mhm.
working full time. He was an engineer. He worked at General Motors his entire career in the Lansing area, and yeah, it was. I'm sure it was very challenging. But like I said, it was several years later when, then when he did remarry, and we have a blended family, and a lot of good, that came out of that, and good memories, and bringing families together and everything. So, but yeah, it certainly has impacted me, and still today, like, especially now, I think, like, I now have two boys, they're 13 and 11, and I'd love for them to know their grandma.
Hmm.
And I have wonderful in-laws that they have with their papa and their grandma. But yeah, so those are just kind of things that I think about now.
Yeah. So, as far as your older siblings, did they take on a different role with you, like more of a parenting role, or would you say you were still able to have that sibling relationship?
I would say still a sibling relationship. I mean, I think my oldest sister probably did feel a little bit of that, I'm sure.
Hmm.
But I still am very close with all my siblings today, particularly my sisters, and I think one of the reasons is because of what we went through all together as kids, and that has always kept us close. And we still remember my mom. We try to get together on the anniversary of her death, or remember her birthday, which was on Halloween. So we always think of Halloween and our mom's birthday. So yeah, it's we've been able to stay strong throughout it and well into adulthood.
When you said that your father was your hero, what things about him stand out that have been like values or traits when you say something like that?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say consistency. He was always just a very consistent dad. Um,
Hmm.
he was always there. He made it to, you know, baseball games when we played baseball, like my sister's softball games, my band concerts, anything, he was always there, which was wonderful. And, just kind of a role model as well. He was faith driven. Like, we were always at church every Sunday, and that certainly has impacted me today. And so yeah, I would say all those things, and yeah, always being there, and always being a support to his kids. I would say
Yeah.
was is heroic for sure.
For sure. Yeah, I volunteered when I was in high school with a organization in Cincinnati that was for grieving children. And so, the premise of it was the woman who had started it was she had lost her son in a car accident.
Wow.
And her and her husband were grieving so much that her other son at one point said, "I'm still alive."
Wow.
And
Yeah.
she started this organization, and every evening it would be a different type of death with children. It would be support groups. So I was trained as a facilitator. But it would be like if you lost a sibling, or if you lost a parent, or if it was cancer versus an accident, because all that grief is so different.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I thought was so nice about that atmosphere is like the kids could grieve and say how they felt, or the things that were happening at school that they felt different or on the outside, and have that support network where people weren't
Hmm.
saying, "Oh, you should be over it already," or
Oh yeah.
and not feel anything. And it was just like people would say, "Isn't that depressing?" And it actually was not a depressing place. It was a place where all the kids could feel whole.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, that I can see how that would be super helpful. I went as a child. I went through counseling, grief counseling, and something that I look back on and was very helpful. And I've always been a I've always shared that I've certainly gone through counseling even as an adult too, in different stages of
Mhm.
my life, and something that I don't think that we should be ashamed of. We should encourage it, and especially not to especially for men, that it's something that it's okay to know that you need help. And
Yes.
so that's something that I've always been a big supporter of as well, and talking about it throughout my life, really.
Yeah, I think it is so important and such a good example because I do think there's these biases or norms around men that, this isn't talked about as openly, where for women, we have conferences and coaching and all of these things where it's more open talking
Yeah.
about these things. So appreciate you bringing that up and being so transparent about it as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, for sure.
So when you were a kid, what did you dream about being? Like what was it that you wanted to do when you got older?
My first dream was be an astronaut.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember watching the movie Space Camp as a kid and thought that was so cool and wanted to go into space. I think probably I wanted to be a baseball player, and that ended in my high school career when I realized I probably wasn't gonna do that. But yeah, well, actually, I guess this kind of leads to my educational journey. It was in high school. I was always kind of interested in the environment, and I had a great high school teacher, a biology teacher where I learned that you could become an environmental engineer as a career.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of starts my career journey that I guess if it's okay, we can jump
Yeah,
into.
that's perfect. Yeah.
Because even though I lead the Michigan Association of CPAs, I'm not a CPA, and so I decided, and I was looking at different colleges, and as I mentioned, decided to go to Michigan Tech. They had an environmental engineering program that I could
Mm.
get into, and I was really excited about that. And actually, speaking of my dad, he's actually a Michigan Tech alum as well, so he was an engineer
Oh,
his whole
okay.
career. So we used to go up to the UP and like camp and visit the campus and everything when I was a kid. And I think he didn't really push me, but I think he secretly hoped that at least one of his kids would go, and he finally got his last one. I'm the youngest, so to go, and it was fantastic. It was a great experience, wonderful university, and I ended up graduating with a bachelor's degree in environmental engineering, and so that's how I really started my career, and I got a job right out of college in the automotive industry. I did some co-op internships with General Motors, and then that's what brought me here down to the Metro Detroit area, where I've really been ever since, working in the automotive industry.
So were you doing environmental engineering for GM?
I was, yep.
So
So,
what kind of role was that? What did that look like?
yeah, so it's pretty broad, but so I worked mostly at a few different facilities where they made cars, as well as parts like transmissions, or I worked at a metal fab plant, and as well as assembly plants. And so as an environmental engineer, you kind of deal with the environmental impacts of the production, like look at air and water and waste and environmental management systems and hazardous materials and all that kind of stuff. So I really enjoyed it, and
Hmm.
loved working at GM. I always still drive GM vehicles, and but there was a part of my job where I had the opportunity. There was some areas of some of the old facilities that I worked at that had contamination from the past, before there was the
Hmm.
EPA and regulations and everything. And so because of that, we were cleaning up the area and the contamination. And with that, there was a lot of interaction with the local public, any neighbors in the area, the city, the state. And I realized I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I really liked the communications aspect of it. And so I decided that I wanted to go back to school. And so I got my master's degree in public relations
Hmm.
at Wayne State University in Detroit. And so I decided to kind of go in a little bit different career path. And I realized after being at GM for a while, if I wanted to go in that career path, I needed it to change. And so I left GM and went and worked for an environmental company. So I was still in the environmental field, but doing more marketing and communications, and that's kind of how I learned, marketing and communications, and advocacy, and some of that type of work.
That's fascinating. So my son is an environmental engineer.
Ah,
My
great.
older son. This has been a tough time in this political environment to be an environmental engineer. Um, but he is so passionate about it. He basically started it like wanting to do this for his life. I mean, I found a book in his bed. It was the Lorax, and he had that's like been his theme book his whole life of, it takes one person to
Yeah.
fix things, and then he would write ideas of how to fix the earth in this
Wow.
little journal. um, so passionate in that same way, and has had like really great experience of getting out and doing some of those things too, going into urban areas to try to help with changing
Yeah.
over to environmental vehicles, and how that planning would look for that help, in those
Yeah.
areas. So yeah,
Wow, that's very cool.
yeah,
Well, hopefully he sticks with it because there's a lot of
yeah,
need for it out there.
yeah. So so with that, how did you end up? So it was a consulting company that
Yeah, it was.
yeah.
Yeah, it was like an environmental management and consulting company,
Hmm.
and so yeah, it was again great experience there, and then like a lot of things, sometimes just a new opportunity just kind of falls into your lap, and so I had the opportunity to leave that company, and then I went and worked for a trade association in the robotics and automation industry,
Mm.
and so doing similarly, I started as director of communications, but like any smaller association, you wear a lot of hats. And so I had the opportunity to work with membership and the board of directors and governance. And we actually started an association in Mexico that I figured out how to do and got to travel to Mexico a lot, which was awesome. I love Mexico. And so, yeah, so that's where I, worked for an association. And like, I know a lot of association individuals, like not only across all the CPA societies. Every state has a CPA association. We collaborate, we network. It's a fantastic group of people that I get to work with. But also other, there's an association for everything, right?
Hmm.
And so not when you talk to people who work for associations, it's not like you don't go to college to want to work for an association, right? You
Yeah.
don't get a degree in associations, but you somehow find your way there,
Hmm.
and they're fantastic organizations to work for. And so, I work in the robotics industry, so certainly, I was a lot of automotive and that kind of thing. So I ended up being vice president of communications and advocacy there. And then here at MICPA, my predecessor was getting ready to retire. And so I always had the goal. I'm kind of always been like a student of leadership. I've always really enjoyed learning about leadership and studying it, and always had the goal of leading an organization one day. And so I, kind of dusted off my resume and got my hat in the ring, and went through the pretty extensive executive search process, and was blessed and honored to be selected as the next CEO of MICPA. And
Yeah,
that
that's
was
awesome.
and I started on February 24th of 2020. So the end of my third week was when the world shut down. So because of COVID, and
Yeah,
that's certainly a challenging time. But now it's been over 5 years. And I look back, and it was.
that's crazy. I can't believe you've been there 5 years.
Yeah, I know it's gone
Yeah.
fast. It was with I didn't know a lot about the accounting profession. I knew a little bit, and then had some connections with a couple CPA firms in the area that were actually involved in the robotics industry. But I certainly, like a fire hose, learned a lot. COVID required change, and it allowed us to change quickly. And
Hmm.
my predecessor Peggy was fantastic, great leader
Yeah.
for decades, and so yeah, I was certainly set up and for success, but things changed quickly, and we've been adjusting and figuring it out still ever since. Like I think we all are, right?
Yeah. It's actually kind of a blessing too with COVID for you starting that role, because especially coming in when your predecessor's been there for so long and there was so much change that
Yep.
like had to happen, you didn't have to probably push it as hard as like had COVID not happened,
Right.
where you had to immediately start leading.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I would never wish a global pandemic on
No.
anyone, of course, but But the timing was almost like, yeah, it was really good timing because we had, there was probably change that like any new person comes into a role, usually you might have a several months to a year to kind of
Right.
figure it out, but we had to figure it out quickly. But as I mentioned, I work with and there's about 30 of us here at MICPA, a fantastic team. Many of them have been here a long time, 20 plus years. Actually, we're celebrating a 20-year anniversary tomorrow. Some have been here for
Wow.
25 years, and they have embraced the change, which has been awesome.
So, what would you say coming from the automotive world and corporate world, the environmental world, consulting? What is some of the things you've learned about making that transition to associations and leading in that way? Like, how is it different than where you came from? Or what, and then what skills still applied?
Yeah, that's another great question. I would say no matter where you are, and this could really apply everywhere it's a people business.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe even more so in associations because you rely on volunteers so much. You have a volunteer board, you have volunteers who are super engaged and involved, and so it's really about the people business of encouraging, of listening. That was actually one of the things I wanted to start. Not coming from the profession, I had this 90-day plan where I was going to get out, go all over the state, meet our members, listen to them, learn from them, like how better can we serve them. Ended up being a lot of Zoom calls originally, but we're still doing it. Here we are 5 years later, and we develop these on the road sessions where we go all over, host them at different places, and get our members to come. I give like well, we used to call it professional issues update, but now we call it the coolest profession update around. Because, as you can see on my board, the CPA stands for the coolest profession around. And we have completely embraced that. And like many other state societies, we share and collaborate a lot. And so we've been embracing that coolest profession around to kind of change what people think of CPAs. So yeah, I think really it is a people business. But then also, I've thought a lot about this. Is I said, well, you don't use your engineering degree at all. I'm like, no, actually, I use it every day. I use one great thing about an engineering degree, and certainly I would say an accounting degree as well, is it teaches you how to look at a problem and solve it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, a lot of what I do is solving problems, right? And so, I certainly, yeah, I might not be involved in water chemistry or wastewater treatment or air
Yeah.
quality anymore, but I certainly use my engineering education all the time in the way I look at problems, and also the way I look at leading and leadership as well. Because I learned even how important culture is, and so a lot of what I do also is building culture and developing culture, and our core values, and something that I think resonates well with the profession too.
So that's a really interesting observation about the problem solving of engineering. Do you have a process that you go through that would be helpful to others to kind of understand what that looks like for you?
Yeah, it's frankly, it's like the kind of like the scientific method which is where you get data,
Mhm.
analyze the data, create, what's called a hypothesis in science or engineering, which is like maybe how you hope that perhaps if you study a problem, you want it to come out, and then create a solution, implement the solution, and then see how see how it responds, or if it works or not, and if it doesn't, then maybe adjust the dials a little bit and try again. And that's one thing especially as we had to change quickly because of COVID. I encourage our team. Let's just try new things. Uh,
Hmm.
and yeah, maybe not all are going to be successful. I don't like using the word failure. I like, hey, maybe it didn't, maybe it didn't respond, or we didn't get the results we had hoped, but we learned from it, and let's use that learning to adjust and move forward and come up with perhaps a different solution. So I would say that's the scientific method that I guess I still use. I don't really think about it in that way, but I still use it every day.
It's in you.
Yeah. Yep.
And then are there, cultural shifts that you try to make that you would suggest that others, work with as well, that they're watching out for or trying to implement or looking at their own organization to assess it?
Yeah. So we have three cultural pillars here that I talk about a lot, and that's joy, trust, and innovation. And I learned all three through different speakers and different books that we could get into. But so I purposely put innovation trust in the middle, because you need trust in order to really have a team, develop a team, to build that trust within the team. But then also, we're in the trust business. CPAs and accountants are certainly in the trust business, right? We say it's the one of the most trusted businesses, but CPAs are their most trusted advisor to their clients or to their businesses if they work for a business. So we're in the trust business, and our members, our CPAs across the state, they trust that we're providing them the tools, the resources that they need. But then at the same time, here within the staff here, we need to make sure that in order for us to build that trust with our members, we first need to have that trust and build that trust with each other. And there's a lot of it is on its communication. Like, trust is like a currency, right? You can build it, but you can lose it pretty quickly, but you rebuild it again. I mean, it's something you're always working on. Like culture, I think it's something you're always working on. You're never done. And then the last one, the innovation piece. I mean, maybe that comes a little bit from my engineering background, but innovation, I feel like it's a word, like, people hear innovation, they're like, oh, it's like startup companies, or it's in laboratories or something like that. But I like to think of it as everyday innovation. We can all be creative. We can all be innovative, and that's really a lot of. We're being creative and innovative in everything we do, and all the new things we try, and new, like even the conference that you spoke at, Elevate a few months ago, we completely reimagined that. And there's tons of innovation going into that, and we're still trying new things and building it. So I love to encourage that innovation. And then the first one is the joy. Joy is my favorite word. And I feel like you think, well, you don't have really joy in the workplace, and absolutely, like, we want to have joy in the workplace, and we celebrate joy. We have a Teams channel, a Joy Teams channel, that we celebrate, like, our successes, our wins, but also, like, joy inside the workplace, where we enjoy each other's company, build, do team builders and that sort of thing. We just did our annual Tigers game last week. We went to a weekday afternoon Detroit Tigers game, which was a lot of fun. But then also joy at home, and but also, like, joy isn't always, it's more of it's not like joy and happiness are different, right? And so, sometimes joy could have not necessarily a negative emotion, but kind of like the roses and thorns, right? You certainly be grateful for the roses, but also, kind of be grateful for the thorns as well. And that's kind of where you have the opportunity to learn from it too. So those are the culture that I like to talk about: joy, trust, and innovation.
Yeah. Interesting, because I literally just launched a new keynote called the Fulfillment ROI, which is based off exactly what you're talking about. Because when people come to me individually after I speak or coaching, the one thing that they say is, I've lost my joy.
Really?
And
Yeah.
how do I get it back? And that's a process, and that's individual work. Like,
Right.
because it's like, as an organization, and I think it's so important what you're talking about is operationalizing it. But then each individual has to find it within themselves. as
Right.
well. Like you can't
Yep.
force joy.
Right. Exactly.
You can just create the framework and the structure
Yep.
for it as well. But in the work that I've done, I've finally have come up with a metrics for it, and what I've
Really.
seen with organizations that shift it in their workplace and how much it, I mean, in firms that I've worked with, doubled revenue, gotten busy
Really.
season hours down to 45 hours a week. You know, it's not just a soft idea. It's
Oh
a,
no.
it is real business imperative.
Hmm. No, absolutely. I 100% agree. Because yeah, you're right. I can't force joy around here in the office, but hopefully I can cultivate it and allow for joy and yeah, and it's really yeah. When I've talked to others about this, it's like wow, that I haven't really thought about that before, but it makes sense, and yeah, it really does. I mean, you don't want to come into work and be a drag every day, right? Like you
Right.
need to cultivate that joy. So we have hopefully it's joy with each other, and enjoying working together, but enjoying working with our members and how we're impacting the profession. And then certainly hopefully that brings joy to outside the workplace too, right? The work life integration, as I call it. I don't like calling it work life balance
Hmm.
because when you're balancing, you're kind of teetering. And
Yeah.
so I encourage work life integration where it's work, it's life, and sometimes life might need you to do something in the middle of the day, and that's good. Go do it. If don't miss your kids, school activity or something like that, or anything if we actually seem like dealing with a lot of elderly parent issues around here, which it's just that time of a season many of us are in, and hey, if you have to take care of those things, take care of those. Like work and life, they need to be integrated in order to find joy in both,
Hmm.
rather than like kind of that balance and trying to balance. And then if you're balancing, you're always unsteady.
Yeah. Well, and energy is contagious.
Mm,
So, like you said, if you're coming in dragging, that's going to be contagious to the next person.
right.
So, it really is a responsibility of being intentional about how you want to feel so that you can cultivate it with your teammates, your
Sure.
members, but also in your work. And even the things that maybe you don't love to do in your work, you can remember why you do it. And
Yeah.
it's because it provides the other joy.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Remembering your why is very important.
Yeah. So now being a father yourself and having talked about your father, uh, you said he was very present with you, and I can't even imagine what he was balancing between a full-time job, five children.
Hmm.
What have you taken into your own personal life from his example?
I guess very similar. I mean, I always want to be there. Both my kids are pretty active in sports, and I coach my youngest son in baseball, and so being there and being a coach, I love. Actually, it's one of my favorite things I do when I'm on the baseball field, either at practice or in a game. I'm not thinking about anything else, and
Right.
and that's what I love about it. They also play hockey, and so I don't I play hockey, I skate and everything, but I don't coach hockey. But I love being in the stands and being there for them. And I'm similar like that. Like today, I'm gonna leave early just to make sure I can get home and help my son with his homework before my other son's hockey practice tonight. So, and I guess that's the presence that I want to show and 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 I do travel a decent amount. Actually, I'm going to be going a little bit when I'm on one of my on the road trips. So I it's not ideal, but it's part of my role. I do need to travel at times, and but when I do, I like even last week when I was gone, I was FaceTiming with my son to help him with his math homework. Right, so still try to be present, even if I have to do it at a distance. So is that, but then also hopefully, like I mentioned, like faith is very important to me, and trying to instill that and be a leader for that for my family and for my kids as well. So I would say being there, being present, and
Hmm.
they're starting to enter the teenage years, so being there for them as they continue to grow and turn into young adults, and it's fun, it's wonderful. Like every stage of has been awesome, and looking. I like every stage. Like right now, actually, they've now gotten into golf, so we've been golfing a lot this past summer, and I
Oh,
just
fun.
love hanging out
Yeah.
on a golf course and golfing, with my kids. And I look ahead and I was like, man, that's something we could do. Like my dad and I, right? He's 84
Yeah.
years old, and I love golfing with him.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I guess those would be the things that I've tried to do, or hopefully I'm doing a decent job of.
So, I think it's really, I just think of those years of my kids growing up, being a busy CPA and trying to make it to everything. But even when I was there, I will admit I wasn't present all the time,
Yeah,
because I was stressed out or worried about something not getting done or a client issue or whatever. So, is there a process that you do to get yourself completely present where you're not thinking about where, I mean, even if it comes in, like how you can, and not maybe 100% of the time, but
yeah.
I think that's the hardest thing. We can put it on our calendar, but then when we're actually there, are we focused?
Yeah, I'll admit I'm probably not very good at it, and it's something I
Hmm.
need to remind myself of, because I very much encourage my team to make sure, like when they're home, especially if they're on vacation or whatever, to do not email, do not be on your phones for work related. And but I don't do a very good job of that myself, I'll readily admit. But there are times where I need to make sure. For example, actually just earlier this week, it'd been a while that we had all sat down to have actually had a family dinner,
Hmm.
just because we're always going in so many different directions, and it was wonderful, and
Yeah.
it's great just to sit down and eat, and my kids have their phones, but put away their phones. My wife and I will put away our phones, and we can just catch up and let's talk about how your school day went, what's going on this week, and so yeah, I do. I probably need to be better at it, but I do, try to be intentional about it.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's just the human struggle,
Hmm.
but with so many demands. And the nice part about the phones is that we can work and have, I call work
Right,
life harmony, work life integration, but it's also the distraction that keeps us not being present when we're there.
right.
It's a back and forth. So I would love to end with just some rapid fire questions. So you pick a
Sure.
category:
Okay.
family and friends, money, spiritual, or health.
Oh wow. I guess I like talking about all of them. Well, money and well, with this is the we talk about accounting, is it's the language of business. So, but something that's particularly been on my mind recently is health. So let's talk about
Okay.
health.
Okay. Things or actions I don't have that I want to have with my health.
So this is the thing. So one of my outlets that I love to do is run.
Hmm.
However, over the last couple months, I've been dealing with some plantar fasciitis, which I've never
Mm,
had before in my life. So
it's
I'll be honest,
painful.
at first I started getting this heel pain. I didn't even know what it was.
Uh-huh.
And finally, I've actually been trying to do different home methods and that sort of thing. And it's been a struggle because I haven't been able to run. I haven't ran in probably 2 months now. And that's where I find I love to run, particularly in the morning, and that's where I can clear my mind. I
Mhm.
think well when I run. And so I miss it. And I've also probably put on a couple of pounds too since then, because traveling and everything, it's hard to always eat well. So yeah, those. But I'm determined to fix it. I going to a doctor to try to figure out how best to whatever because I basically gave up now trying to do it on my own. And I
Yes.
realized I need help, and here I am. I'm the one who's saying you should always get help if you need it, particularly counseling or anything. And I was probably slow on going to the doctor because I just thought I could either deal with it, or
Right.
my home remedies would fix it, and it hasn't worked. So So I'm really, I guess I should take my own lesson and get it fixed so I can get back to not being in pain when I'm walking and being able to run again.
Yes, so fun getting older. Things or actions I do have that I want to keep with my health.
One of the things that I have done that for it's quite a few years now is I like to fast. I'm an intermittent faster.
Hmm.
And so that's really worked for me. I actually I like it a lot. And so I definitely want to continue doing that. And again, sometimes it's harder than others, but fasting and keeping when there's different methods, but maybe you might be 16/8 or whatever. But that's something I definitely want to continue because it does. I feel like it does help maintain, not only, weight wise, but also I feel like it helps me maintain focus too,
Hmm.
when I fast. So that's what I definitely want to continue and maintain.
Okay. Things or actions that I don't have that I don't want with my health.
I'm pretty good at not eating too many sweets and I'm not, usually, I mean, sometimes ice cream or something like that, but
Hmm.
I don't want that to, especially if I haven't been getting as much exercise. I don't want that to come back in extra calories, I guess. So that's what I want to make sure that I continue to do that, or don't do that, I should say.
Yeah, I wish I had that. Chocolate's my downfall for sure.
Really? Yeah, it's tough.
Things or actions that I do have that I don't want.
Do have that I don't want. I probably, well, this is, I say I fast, but sometimes even if I just eat, sometimes I'll just eat one meal a day. I probably overeat at that meal. And,
Hmm.
and so I need to be more focused on eating more of a reasonable meal, or maybe I should eat two smaller meals a day rather than just one big one or something like that. And then also, I guess when I travel, it's like, when you have sometimes it's hard in a restaurant, you have a big meal and I
Yeah.
probably don't need to eat it all, but that, is kind of instilled in me as a kid is you cleared your plate, right?
Yes.
And, or also probably something else too is eating, maybe what my kids don't eat. Like I don't need those chicken fingers that they didn't eat, right? So yeah,
Awesome.
those are things that I don't want.
So is there anything that as we close up that you want to share that we haven't shared or that you want to reiterate as we close up this conversation?
I almost forgot you were recording this. I thought this was just a conversation between us, but no, I mean, I came into this like I didn't realize it was going to go right into, my childhood and stuff, but it was a really nice conversation. And I think obviously you're creating work-life harmony and what I said about work-life integration. I mean, it is aligned.
Hmm.
I guess one thing I didn't mention that also I find that's very helpful for me is I'm a morning person. I wake up pretty early and I have a routine that I enjoy that I do even and certainly on days I work, but even weekend days or where I spend time with in prayer and my faith and kind of some devotionals and reading of the Bible and that sort of thing. But also I learned this some years ago is I journal a little bit. It's more of like just kind of what happened the day before, and I still have a journal. But then also I think back in the last 24 hours and I write down what I was grateful for and kind of the attitude of gratitude. And so like I mentioned the dinner I had with my family the other night, like the next morning I was thinking about it, I was like, wow, I was really grateful we were able to do that. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, but I mentioned, sometimes it's hard to be grateful for something. So sometimes it's okay to be grateful for the negative things, or as I mentioned, the thorns. Like you can be grateful for the roses, but also be grateful for the thorns because that's where you grow from and
You learn.
that's where you learn from. So I guess that if I would that routine is what kind of centers me for the day and gets me ready for the day. And then people do it differently. Like people are not morning people, which is fantastic. If you're not a morning person, maybe you do it in the evening before you go to
Right.
bed or something. Like everyone can find their own way of a little bit of a reflection, a little bit of preparing for either that day or the next day. And so that is, and then the journaling has certainly helped me.
Yeah, I think that's important to have a routine that you can disconnect for a moment and just go internal, and especially remember things that maybe you forgot happened in the day.
Yeah.
And it can be little things, just like the sun came out. It
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
have to be huge things, but
Right.
those things at that moment of like, yeah, this feels good.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that
Yeah, for sure.
routine, and thank you for sharing your story. You'll also have to listen to Alicia Galinas from the
Oh yeah.
Colorado CPA.
Yeah.
She lost her parents very young, and she told her story
Oh my
on
gosh.
the
Yeah.
podcast too.
Really?
So,
So I know Alicia's fantastic. Like I said, we collaborate a lot with all the state societies, not only the staffs, but particularly the CEOs. And, I've gotten to know Alicia, but we haven't shared that, I guess. So,
yeah.
next time I see her, I'll have to listen to it. And then, yeah, we'll have to have I'm sure a heartfelt, chat.
Yeah, yeah. It's always those things that we don't necessarily know about people that make them more human,
Sure.
right? So thank you
Yeah.
for sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
No, you're welcome, Amy. Thanks for the opportunity.
And now for my mindful moments with this conversation that I had with Bob Doyle. I so appreciate when guests show up ready to share their story, and Bob definitely did with beginning this conversation starting about the passing of his mother when he was a young boy, and the effect that it had on him, and his transparency and vulnerability about going to therapy and how important grief counseling was for him, and also at different points in his life of where therapy has helped. I think for all of us, this transparency is really important, because just like taking care of our bodies, we have to take care of our brain. And talk therapy is real. And with the right therapist that is trained and is the type of therapy that you're looking for, because there's so many different types of therapists, it's important to spend that time to just assess what's going on inside of you, because it does affect your physical health as well when you're not doing that. The other thing that we talked about was his father, and how his father took on so much responsibility when his mother unfortunately passed away, having 5 kids between the ages of 6 and 14 and still working full time. So that was so important in this conversation of talking about how we go about this when we're got so much on our plate. And I can only imagine how stressed out his father was during this time. But the few things that Bob remembers about his father that was such a good example for him and what he's taken into his life is the consistency his dad showed, even having a full-time job and 4 other children besides Bob, that he always showed up at his events. And he really was routine oriented, where faith was a big piece of Bob's upbringing. And whatever that might be for you, whether that's spirituality or not, it doesn't matter what the belief is, but where you have that time of self-reflection and stillness, which prayer gives you, meditation gives you, sometimes working out can give you as well, that is all spirituality. And being that example as an adult, you just don't realize until your kids get older how much that trickles down to them. And in the opposite, when we're too busy and we're not present, that also affects their behaviors of not being present as well, and maybe who they are as an adult. And so it is really important to think about the effects of how we show up, and showing up with intentionality, that we can not intend to make someone else feel unimportant. We're all living our lives and walking in our own bodies and life. But the thing is that someone is going to take that as they're going to take it, how they're feeling. And as children, it's important that we are being the role model of not only how we want to show up, but the example of how we want them to show up, not just saying the words, but actually living them as well. And that goes the same for leadership. It's very hard when there's messaging and values that are said, but the leaders aren't living that. And when the leaders aren't living it, the staff doesn't believe it, and therefore it doesn't actually permeate into the culture. So it's so important that if we are putting out initiatives or the way that we want our culture to be, that the leader, yourself, maybe your colleague, is also demonstrating that in their behaviors so that it actually occurs in the organization. So we also talked about his shift in his career from environmental engineering to association work, and the interesting shifts that he had along the way of really observing as he got deeper into the environmental work, of the advocacy work that he was doing with the public, that he really enjoyed that and went back to school for it. And I think that's a really important lesson of just that lifetime learning. When we notice that we're really interested in something, then taking that beat, that step, that pause in our life and going to learn more about what that is, either determines a different pathway for you, or maybe you decide it's not for you by going deeper in the learning. But that growth of ourself is what creates joy for us, because it gives us something to look forward to. It gives us something to motivate, even when we're in the muck of it, might have a ton of homework and it's hard. The thing is, our brain is growing and we're feeding it. We're feeding it with information. And as our brain processes, we're able to integrate that to decide where we want to go. And that really led to a career shift for him going into association work. And, I asked him what his experiences outside of what he does now helped him in the work that he does. And the number one thing that he said is, no matter where you are, it's a people business. Being there to encourage, to listen, to learn, all of those things of being present, the things that we talked about his dad, those are the same things that are important no matter what organization that you're with, because at the end of the day, we are human beings and we need to be seen, we need to be heard. And when someone else shows up, ready to listen, ready to hear you, and shows that you matter, then your trust in them builds even further. We also talked about how his engineering background helped him as he goes into new roles. And we talked about that scientific method of engineering, of gathering data, analyzing the data, and coming up with a hypothesis based on that data, and developing different options or solutions to test before you actually implement them organizationally. And also just that curiosity of responding to what happens once you start innovating it, and how you might shift and change to keep making it better over time. And lastly, we talked about these culture pillars that he has really utilized to create the culture in the organization that he's with. And the first one being joy. And we had a long discussion about joy, that joy is an energy and we want to have that in the workplace because it is contagious. And so it's important that we find ways for people to find joy in their work, to celebrate maybe their personal wins or professional wins, and also where they're finding joy at home as well. That we want our work to be able to benefit outside of our work as well, so that we can increase our joy. And the second one being trust. And trust is so important, because if we don't have trust on a team, then what happens is most initiatives fail because everyone is kind of out for themselves, doesn't believe in the others, and building that trust is so important. And one of the biggest things with trust is communication. I can tell you, hands down, in the organizations that I go to, the number one issue is no one is communicating. There's things we're thinking, and then there's assumptions we make of why someone did something that they did, but often we're not actually communicating it and having the conversation. And that is the way we build trust, is by having those transparent conversations so we can build each other up as a team. And the third pillar was innovation, and really understanding what are the little things you can innovate each day. It doesn't have to be large things, but what things can you try? What things can you get curious about in order to keep getting better every day? Even if it's just a centimeter, an inch, it doesn't matter. It's that you acknowledge it and observe it as you go. So there's so many great stories that Bob shared in here, and I so appreciate the fact that he was so vulnerable and transparent with the story of his life story in order to not only be more relatable of that he's a human and has gone through human things, but also that we learn from these stories as well. Now, if you're feeling overwhelmed or looking for a more structured way to create that work-life harmony that we do at the B3 Method Institute, we have a free workbook that will help you with proven exercises, reflections that you can do, and just help you build that foundation for lasting change. If you go to businessbalancebliss.com and find the workbook there, you'll be able to download it right from our site and be able to start your process of not feeling overwhelmed, maybe finding those things that bring you more joy so that your energy can be contagious and intentional in the way that you show up at work or at home. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing to this podcast. Thank you for sharing this podcast. I so appreciate this community that follows us and is just growing together to learn from these stories so we can all get better. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. I hope you will take a moment to pause before entering back into your day to reflect on this podcast and note 1 to 2 actions you are inspired to do from today's conversation that you could incorporate into your life. To read the full blog and listen back to this episode or any other, you can find them at www.amyvetter.com/Breaking Beliefs podcast and related videos on my YouTube channel. For daily inspiration, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Amy Vetter CPA. I hope that you will choose to like this and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and more so that you can join us for more inspiration on our next episode.